So if you can find a way to be of value to people, that's one way to start building your brand, because that's a specific brand. Like I am a filmmaker, or I'm a storyteller that helps others tell their stories, or I'm a storyteller that is a teaching artist, whatever the case is, that's part of your brand as well, right? But finding ways to be of service, I have found, is a great way to be building up audience for your work. Child, we did it.
Woo woo! We here.
we are here with a whole podcast.
A whole
Podcast, not half a podcast, a whole podcast.
That's right, 100.
Welcome to the Creative Cut Up Podcast, a lively and honest space for storytellers that sits at the intersection of craft, business, and independence. I'm Felicia Pride, a writer, director, producer, head honey and honey child, and head storyteller of the Create Daily, a platform I founded in 2012 to help storytellers, especially those of us who are historically excluded, thrive creatively and professionally. And I'm here with my co-host because we got some cutting up to do.
We sure do. I'm Drea Donna Rowland, the creative executive at Honey Child, and a writer and producer.
Yes, she is.
And I'm Georgette Pierre, a voice actor and producer. You can hear it, right?
Oh, we hear that voice,
right.
honey.
Oh,
we
yeah.
hear the voice.
Oh,
So join us weekly where we talk shop and smack and share the good, the bad, and the ugly. Child.
Listen.
And from 3 different perspectives, which I love, providing tangible tips to support your creative practice, your career, and your artist self. Because we all know that being an artist is hard as hell.
Oof.
Say that.
But the Creative Cut Up is here to help. Shall we begin, ladies?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Hey, hey, hey. Welcome to another installment of the Creative Cut Up Podcast.
It's been a minute, it feels like.
It's been like 2 weeks. Which is a minute, you know?
Yeah.
It is work keeping up a weekly podcast. It is work. We're thankful for each and one of you listening. And we love when you share the podcast, when you tag us in your sharing, and when you review, because all of that helps us to spread the word about this podcast.
Absolutely. Yes. Welcome back from vacay. I know you had a little mini vacay too. You know, you deserve rest too, Felicia.
Child, and it wasn't enough rest. I'm going to say that right now. It was not enough rest. So I'm on hiatus officially.
Okay.
And then I went on medical leave. So coming off of medical leave, I'm still like, I need to rest. So I've been trying to just be intentional about setting rest time. Like the other day, I had a whole pool day, didn't do any meetings.
Okay. Yeah.
I was like, I just need to be at the
Yeah.
pool. So but I am still a little tired. So I gotta recoup the rest for sure. And how about you? How you doing?
You know, some days are better than others, I have to admit. And so speaking of pool, I've definitely still kept up swimming lessons, had a breakthrough.
Which we love.
Yeah, it's been a form of therapy for me, being in the water. And so
the water is spiritual, and water in itself, because when I did go on a little short vacation, I went to Cabo, and I love spas. So I think I'm gonna be a spa influencer if this writing thing don't work out. But hydrotherapy is real, and when you think about water, is that girl, because water can cure so many things in different forms.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so.
But even though I've been on hiatus, I still, have been. I always keep my eye out. You know what I mean? I always keep my eye out for certain things.
Yes.
And there had been these books, a book I was tracking, I should say, that we were tracking through Honey Child, and just this author that I love, been just tracking her work. And I saw that she posted about one of her books being optioned. And she mentioned who it was optioned by. And I happen to know who was optioned by. When I say I hit them up immediately, was like, hey, are you looking for a writer showrunner for this project? Because I love this author. I love her books. I'm trying to be down. I also told my manager, hey, hit up the studio, because it was optioned by a production company in the studio. I'm like, hit up the studio.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to work with them, let them know my interest. And it kind of went from there. But what was great about it is that it is a project that is so perfect for honeys. It's so perfect for honeys. And what I've come to realize is that, Honey Child, which is our production company, right? We have this very specific mission of developing work by, for, about honeys. And I say that very specifically because that leaves it wide open for us, right? So by honeys, one, anything I do, right? So I can do, a short story about a preschoolers. It's for honeys because I did it, right? It is our ethos, at least. For honeys, so very specifically for honeys, which we have a wide taste of things that we like, right? And then about honey, so that's more specific, where it would center a honey in some shape or form or fashion. For me to go out in Hollywood and be like, this is what I write about, is very risky because it seems like a small niche. But the fact of the matter is, what I learned is that more projects have come my way since I got super specific on who I serve as an audience. And that's kind of what we're talking about today, right? Is building audience and how we can think about our audience, how we can cultivate that audience, and how it can help us in our careers, how it can help us with our projects, and how I swear by, I swear by audience. It is a top ethos at Honey Child. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it's interesting when they talk about marketing and I've been in classes and workshops. It's that it almost feels like a dirty question because people just want to be like, I want to target everyone. And they're like, the more specific you can get about who you are going after, the easier it will be. Starting with Honey Child and the ethos on why it was very important to specifically focus on the demographic of Black women 40 plus.
Well, the truth is you can't target everyone.
Right.
That's the truth. And I think there's also a sub conversation that happens around universality, right? When they're like, we want this to be universal. Usually that's code for we want this to white people to like it, right? So I kind of, when I hear universal, I kind of sometimes, there's a side eye happening.
Right.
Because the universality is in the specificity. And you can't target everyone. You just can't. Like it's impossible because we have so many different ways of consuming work. We have so many different perspectives. And so it's just really, really hard to do that. Even when you have projects that hit the 4 quadrants or projects that, appeal to a mass audience, that still is not everybody, So marketing 101 though, because, I do have a marketing degree, is target audience. So starting with a target and then expanding from there, because when you start with a target, you can actually put a plan into place and a strategy into place that is specific to be able to reach a group of people. I think what happens is you find that people are scared of certain target audiences, right? Which is also code for like non-white audiences. We're scared, either because we think they're too small, even though business cases prove that we're not. Like if you look at I had posted on LinkedIn about Bad Boys, over 60% of the people who went to see Bad Boys opening weekend were people of color. Black people were 40 something percent and Latinos were 20 or 30 something percent. We can open a movie. Okay. You know what I mean? We can open a movie. And then if you look at how the movie did internationally, but anyway, usually Target is, people are scared of Target because and also it's also because they may feel like they don't know how to reach that target audience, right? It's like, well, we know how to reach white people, but Black people, we don't, so it's all these sort of sub conversations and perspectives that are happening when we talk about audience. But one, I think as creators, I just think when you have the people on your side, you are unstoppable. And so early on in my career, maybe because, again, I didn't come from Hollywood, I came from the book world. Like my first sort of being in the public way was as being an author, and marketing is really important when it comes to books and all of that. So I had a publicist, right? I understood how to think about marketing strategies and marketing plans to help sell my books, which is really, selling books is hard. It's really, really hard. So you got to have all the plans. But I brought that sort of perspective and practice into my work as a screenwriter, right? So when I came to Hollywood, I'm like, okay, I got to be thinking marketing. I got to be thinking publicist. So I would have a publicist for certain projects. So I was thinking about those things early on, and also who do I write for? And then being able to start to begin to cultivate that audience.
When you start to hone in on an audience, you do think about if the audience is going to be enough. With the audience that you started going with, is it because you started with what you knew? Some of like even the marketing 101s. because someone could say they want an audience that's not necessarily them, but like, how does that fare for them? Sometimes, like, I'm always been kind of teetering the lines on like, where do you go? Do you go with what you know and who you are as a potential audience member or viewer or consumer of something, or do you go with like, no, I really want to go after these people?
I think for me, it's like, who do I create for? Who do I write for? And people be like, I write for everyone. When you, or
Please.
my work is for everyone. And it's like, okay, girl. I have no problem saying I write for Black people. I have no problem saying that. And I write for Black people, and I'm always very happy when there are other audiences who find themselves in the work. I'm very happy when that happens. That makes me very proud. But first and foremost, I write for Black people. And what that helps me with is, one, being specific in the work. I look at projects, particularly projects that don't do well, and a lot of times they don't do well from a marketing standpoint because I don't know who this project is for, and neither did the audience. You try to be so universal that you are like, I don't want to market to the Black folks, and then the project fails. Do you know what I mean? Or you write a project about Black people for white people, and the project fails. So I'm very specific that I write about Black people because that will help with the success of the project, point blank, period. And then being happy when others are, come into the fold, and finding ways to invite others into the fold. But from a marketing perspective and a marketing plan, if I know that I'm targeting Black people, and again, you can even get more specific, Black people of a certain age, like we do at Honey Child, you can talk about gender and all of that, then you know where they are. And if you don't know where they are, you start to research where they are. Where are they? How do they like to consume their work? How can we reach them where they are?
Mm-hmm.
That's then how the marketing plan starts to form and shape, because you know who they are. Then you're like, where are they?
Yeah. Yeah. I think about, it's a handful of times like this actually like pops off for at least Black creators. And so Robin Lee, writer, actor, Honey, The Idea of You, her book, blew up, was, adapted into a film starring Anne Hathaway. Loved the film. And I could actually tell there was a little bit of flavor. And I was like, oh, this was definitely written by a non-white person.
Yeah, we wrote about it for Honey Child. So she was trying to get a book sold that had a Black woman protagonist in an interracial relationship. So in a relationship with a white man. And she could not get it sold. And she was actually told, oh, we have our interracial romance for the year. And so she was like, oh, okay. So she went off and wrote a book about some white folks and was able to sell it, which is wonderful, right? Like, we're like, get that back.
Yeah.
But then also we're like, how do we make a system where there can be more than one? Yes. There can be more than one interracial romance, Yeah.
What else we can do when we're looking at the target audience? And is it something to be said that to stick with the target audience, no matter if you feel like it's very niche?
I mean, I think it's a personal choice, right? There are definitely, non-white creators, Black creators who don't want to write stories that center Black people, right? That is absolutely their prerogative. I do think it's up to you if you want to write to the market, and that's across the board. You know what I mean? If you want to write to the market in terms of they're looking for thrillers, so you're like, let me write a thriller. Or if you want to write to the market because they're like, they want white people, let me write white people. I think that's a personal choice. Well, what I will say is this. If you think about some of the most successful, and I'll say Black creators, some of the most successful Black creators, they all started with Black audiences and they made independently for those Black audiences. Ava DuVernay, Will Packer, Issa Rae,
right,
Lena Waithe. They all made something on their own that was for Black audiences. Do you know what I mean? And then Hollywood comes calling. So I think there's something to be said about, and Tyler Perry can be added to that too, right? Like, there's something to be said about establishing an authority with an audience that Hollywood likes. Now, what you do when you get to Hollywood and you get big, that's a different story, right?
Yeah.
But to be able to say, I have an audience and I know what they want, is very attractive to Hollywood. Right now, when you get there, like even in a situation of Issa Rae, where they didn't necessarily want her starring in Insecure, they wanted someone else starring in Insecure. You'll still have to fight those battles, but that's when you can then lean on business and be like, no, this is what it's going to be. I'm going to keep trusting that I know my audience and what they want, and go from there. So I do think there's something to be said about, if you look at the past of some of our most successful Black creators, that they did start with a target audience and they also made independently.
So I'm curious from a brand standpoint, when you're start to talk about like, Felicia Pride is a brand, how do you start to even navigate and carving out who your audience is, right? Like, you have the extension of the work that serves a certain audience. Do you automatically feel like you hold on to that target audience, or do you kind of craft what you feel your audience is from your own personal brand standpoint?
I'll answer it this way. In general meetings with production companies and studios, I tell them that I write about 3 things. So this is the brand of me as a writer. 1, I write about Black love, and I define that expansively. So that is love of self, love of community, love of family, friendship love, romantic love, erotic love, love of art. That's how I describe it. I also write about characters uncovering or coming back to their authentic selves. And then I also write about, the third thing is I write about class and the American dream. So if you look at a project like Really Love, you have Black love across the board. You have a character trying to get to their authentic artistic self. And then you also have gentrification in the background, right? If you think about Tender, you have Black love across the board. You have a character rediscovering and coming back to our authentic self. And then you have this conversation around American dream and leaving dreams behind. Those are the 3 things that I write about. So from a brand standpoint, as a writer, I tell folks that so they know what to think about me for, right? So people come to me with projects with those things in mind. And now that I added old bitches to the mix, right? that I write about old bitches and I represent for old bitches, I can't tell you how many projects come my way. And that was actually surprising to me. I made the decision to focus on Black women 40 and over because that's what I wanted to write about. 1, and I felt like that's also my bag too, right? If I center them or they're there, I can put anybody around them, anybody in there. And even if I have a project that the protagonist made, like I have a project now, the protagonist is in the 20s, but it's an intergenerational family story. That's my bag. I can do. So I was like, I want to be in my bag. And these are the projects that light me up and excite me the most. And again, it's also anything that I want to write. So that leaves it open. But when I think about having a honey in there, some way, shape or form, there's going to be a honey, that sort of gives me some grounding, if that makes sense. So I made the decision from that perspective. The second part of the decision, though, was from an opportunity standpoint. I'm like, honey's got money. They got influence, social influence, they got social capital, they have financial capital, and they're also like very vibrant. From, if we think about entertainment and the honeys that, or the Black women who are in the business at the top of their game running studios are honeys, or very close to being honeys. And then if you think about entertainment, Beyonce, that's all I have to say, right? So that was the second point. It was like, I see an opportunity. I felt like there was a gap in the things that I want to watch versus what is on screen. I was like, these aren't the conversations I'm having with my friends. These aren't the things that we're talking about. I feel like there's an opportunity here to really fill a gap in the marketplace around these types of projects. Because I also know that honeys over-index in terms of watching television and film consumption. So that was the second piece of it, right? And so those are the 2 ways that I made the decision about branding myself as a writer in terms of the things that I write, branding myself in terms of the audiences that I'm interested, the target audience that I'm interested in reaching, but of course going beyond that, and then also seeing an opportunity in the marketplace.
Is there some tangible things or questions like some of us could be asking? Because I don't feel like I'm as clear as you on what my brand is. I'll be like, oh, an Oprah meets Chelsea Handler. That's not clear enough. You can understand who Oprah is. You can understand who Chelsea Handler is. But to get as clear as you are, even from the writer standpoint or from a creator standpoint, like what are things that we could be thinking about to start breaking down how we need to represent ourselves to be able to target or build an audience for whatever we're building or whatever's an extension of us?
I think it's 2 things. 1, I think we have to be really honest with ourselves. I think what happens is you know who you want to write for and what you want to write about, but you're scared. You're scared, 1, the marketplace don't want to buy it, right? Acting on your ideas is a form of self-love. And when I decided to write the Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal, it was with you in mind. Storytellers with stories inside of you that you need to get out into the world. But life, fear, uncertainty has a way of leaving us stuck. But no more. It's time to reclaim our creative practice and get unstuck. The Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal can help you get back on creative track. 30 days of dynamic prompts, exercises to stimulate creativity, alongside motivational quotes, journal pages, and more. If you're ready to create again, get your copy of the Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal today at creativecomeback.com. That's creativecomeback.com. Because it's never too late to become the artist you always wanted to be. Or you're scared nobody's going to get it. Or you're scared you're going to be too exposed. Like, fear is always such a huge driver in everything. So I think we have to be super, super honest. Because, my first production company was, it's still my overall production company. It's called Felix and Annie, named after my parents. And I was going to tell Gen X stories. And I was like, I don't really want, I don't know if I want to tell like the 45-year-old male story, like from his point of view. I just don't want to do it. So that helped me to get more specific. Also, just in terms of like strategy, I'm like, why limit it to Gen X when people turn 40 every day? So why not open it up in that way? So that was a way that I opened it up, right? So it was me getting honest about the stories that I wanted to tell. And that changed. You may start out because Really Love has a male protagonist, right? Like, that was the first feature I ever wrote, was this very male centered story. And then things may change. You may say, I want to do something different, but it's about you being honest and being okay with those things and embracing what it is you really want to do. And then 2, you look across your work, and often we write about things based on childhood trauma. The reason why I write about class and American Dream, which sounds like, it could sound weird to certain folks, is because, that was sort of, I felt like the downfall of my father. He was chasing this American dream that did not serve him. And his downfall impacted me and impacted our family. That's why we write about it. That's why I write about it. And so I think you'll be able to find often themes that you write about based on childhood trauma, things that happened to you. And then again, it's reading your work or having a friend read your work. Like, what are you noticing in my work as you read it? That can also help you to start developing and understanding the themes that you write about and your brand as a storyteller.
I remember when I was talking to my friend, he was helping me with some content that I was looking to market, and he's a marketer. And so the one thing that he was like, you got to answer, like, what's your mission, right, of this brand? Like, what are you looking to tell, right? Because once you get clear about your mission and your vision, anything that you do from that point on will either align with it or not align with it. And that stuck with me. And I was starting to get a little clear about who my audience was, but I got to get back to the work, right? I got to get back to creating the work for this set audience. So there has been some thoughts and hangups around, will this audience make sense? Is this audience really my audience?
I think also what's helpful too is when you actually are in a position to make something, that's why I'm also a big fan of short films. I understand that they can be expensive. I understand that you may not get the financial ROI, but I think you get a different type of ROI that could be really helpful for your career. And taking a look back at it, for instance, On the Road was really helpful because I got to see in real time our target audience.
Yep.
Love it. But we wrote it for them, created it for them, and to see Black women cackle at this film was amazing. And then to go to places and see white women cackle at the film, white men cackle at the film, young people, that's when you're like, oh, got it. And that's what we talk about when we think about target audience, but also the specificity in the storytelling. People are attracted to the specific. And I do think there's something valid about certain folks, often white folks, not being able to see themselves in other characters because they're been used to being centered so much. But most of us can put ourselves in other people's shoes because we have to.
Yeah. Absolutely.
because we have to. So when you have that specific storytelling, it's like, oh, I get it. I feel it. Like, this is like my family. They don't look like my family, but this is like how my family deals with X, Y, and Z, you know? So I think that being able to test can also help, and seeing who's showing up and who's interacting with the work can also
Yeah.
be helpful for sure.
I look forward to kind of honing in on that.
But I will say a couple of things I think people can do to start, because I think that building audience. So I used to work as an impact producer, so I worked in film distribution. Impact producer essentially develops marketing plans and strategies for social justice projects, right? And how do we use these projects to make impact, move people to take action? And when I would talk to documentary filmmakers, part of it would be about the impact of this particular project and the marketing of this particular project. But I always encourage them to think about their career, right? That how each project can build upon your career, and how you want to be developing audiences that travel with you from project to project. That for me is like the goal, because also we want to have sustainable careers to continue to do the work, right? So some of the things that I've done to try to cultivate audience and bring that audience across projects, right? One thing is, I've run the Create Daily for a long, long time, for 12 years. I did not start to Create Daily in order to create an audience. I started it to be of service to my fellow creators. But in that, started to cultivate an audience because of all the value and service that the Create Daily provides. So if you can find a way to be of value to people, that's one way to start building your brand, because that's a specific brand. Like, I am a filmmaker, or I'm a storyteller that helps others tell their stories, or I'm a storyteller that is a teaching artist. Whatever the case is, that's part of your brand as well, right? But finding ways to be of service, I have found, is a great way to be building up audience for your work and for the things that you do, right? Because it's like, okay, you've given me so much value. Yes, let me check out your short on YouTube. You know what I mean? So that's one way. A second way is to keep the conversation going. The way that I look at marketing in my career is I look at it as long tail storytelling. How do I keep telling the story of my career for this audience, right? And how do I do that over multiple channels in places that they are? So how do I use social media to do that? I'm a big fan of newsletters. How do I use email and collect email addresses when I'm at this screening or doing this event? How can I collect email addresses and stay in touch with people? Other thing I've done is I've had a publicist. I am very open about, good publicists are worth their weight in gold. Not every publicist is built the same, of course. You definitely need to understand how publicity works in order to understand how it might work for you. But I've worked with Jasu Sims, my publicist, for over 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
We've worked together, and we're very strategic, and we don't always have something to talk about in terms of my career, but we're always building. And we also did a lot of grassroots publicity, right? We started with the people, we stayed with the people. And even as you continue to be able to be featured in some of these bigger places, being able to have a foundation of grassroots placements goes a long way. Especially journalists move platforms and publications, and they remember you and all of that. So being able to establish relationships with journalists, being able to work with a publicist, or understand how publicity works and being strategic around it for your own projects. I think you should have a publicity budget for your project if you can. So I think that's something that I've done that's been really, really helpful. And then also showing up and doing all the things as part of that, like all the podcasts, going to all the events, traveling with the film, like meeting people, being out there, keeping relationships going. Like, all of that helps when you think about cultivating audience and building your brand as a storyteller. And I know that it's a lot of work, but it is really worth it. The seeds that Jasu and I have planted in particular continue to bloom, where we're at the point where we get a lot of inbound requests for speaking engagements or press, because of the seeds that we've been planting for over 10 years.
I saw this video with Tyler, the Creator, and he was talking about how, kind of in the same vein with like Bad Boys 4, like when you have this product, just because the product is out, even if it came out a year ago, doesn't mean you stop talking about it. And he was just like, when he had perfume, he was like giving out samples to people, and he was just like, my album dropped a year ago and I'm still talking about it. He was like, I don't understand how people just promote something once. And I mean, and when he broke it down, I was like, he's right, because you think that you share it once and that everyone saw. He was like, no, there's new audiences that have not experienced my work, listened to my project, and things of that nature. Have to do multiple things to get at least a percentage of eyeballs on something.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of our ethos at Honey Child is a project is new to someone who hasn't heard of it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, that's how we've been talking about Tender. Tender came out 4 years ago. We still talk about Tender. We, posted Tender on YouTube. I want to say maybe 5 weeks ago. It has 192,000 views on it.
Wild.
This is a film that's 4 years old, right?
Yeah.
I used to work in book publishing and I worked in marketing. And the sort of way the practice was, okay, you get 6 weeks to market your book and then they move on. And even as a marketer at that point, I was like, I don't understand why we only give the book 6 weeks. That doesn't seem like enough time to, let it reach audiences and audiences to hear about it, particularly if people need to see things 7 times before they take action. Like, it just didn't make sense to me, and this was me like coming out of college. So that's one thing that I think about. I also think about Will Smith. Let's talk about Will Smith and Oprah for a minute, okay? Because the way that they promoted their films, I was so impressed with
Same.
how much Will did for that film. And then it reminded you, like, oh, he always was like this. I mean, social media has definitely like taking it to another level where we could really see it. But he was the one who was like, I'm going international. That's how I become an international movie star. I'm going to every territory. I'm doing all these things. But the way that he promoted this movie, I was super, super impressed. And then even Oprah, how many purple outfits that Oprah purchased for The Color Purple, honey? She was
I didn't even peep
out
that
there.
she was wearing purple every time.
Yes. And she was out there. Like, that's what you want out of a producer to act, who has that star power to really be promoting the movie and all of that. So I was really, really impressed. Like, wow, the amount of, and that's the truth. Like, you can't take for granted people's attention. That like, oh, I'm gonna put it out there and they're gonna watch it. No, it takes work to get in front of people. It takes work to have people click on play on your short, and you cannot take that for granted. And also, you can't take any views for granted. I know we have this mentality of it's got to be a certain amount of views. Like, we just uploaded something. I uploaded my director's reel to YouTube. It was on Vimeo. And I got 80 views in one day. I was like, wow, I got 80 views. Being excited about 80 people have watched your work. Because I think the social media game has kind of tainted where we need a certain amount of views and we need all of this. But don't take for granted that people are actually watching the work, and continue to cultivate that audience. So those are the things that I would say about that it is a long tail. And again, if you think about it as a career, not as from a project, right? I am promoting this project because I know I am trying to take this audience with me along my entire career. That's what makes the difference. That's what makes the difference.
Yeah, I mean, leaving no stone unturned. I think about that, and it's you're talking about people that don't have to necessarily do marketing
at all.
They treat the project. I mean, I appreciate for Will. He literally. I mean, you're seeing people that you normally wouldn't even interact with, and for him, it was just like, this is still someone that could go watch this movie. This is someone that I want to interact with, and it was. I appreciate. I mean, I saw it twice, right? Like, I went to go see it twice, but because it was the marketing, I was like, did I miss something the first time? Let me go back. Because of the marketing. Because of the marketing. So there's a lot to be said about that, leaving no stone unturned. So yeah.
And I would say, putting in the same creativity that we do in making the work, in promoting the work and connecting it with our audiences. I think sometimes we get it messed up when we isolate the audience, be on some I made it for me. Okay. Maybe, right? But if you really made it for you would have never released it. So I think it's important to really like have respect for the audience and want to connect with them and want to share the work. I talk about all the time, not sharing the work to me is selfish. That's because you're not the only person who worked on this.
Fair enough. Yep. That
You're
makes
not
sense.
the only person who worked on
Yeah.
this. And also you made it for a reason. So you need to make sure the people who you intended it for see it. Like,
Yeah.
because it's not perfect, you're not going to share it. How selfish. So yeah, I just encourage writers, in particular too. I know that sometimes we like to play the background. Stop playing the background. Start finding your people, your tribe. Start cultivating them. Start moving them along your career journey. Continue to make high value work for them, and continue to tell them about that high value work.
Ashe. Yes, yes, yes. Oh gosh. So shall we get into our segment, How We Create?
Yes, let's do it.
Where we share all forms of inspiration that may have stopped us in our tracks, made us laugh, had us shouting, or even reminded us to rest. I can go. So I would at least love to shout out Robin Lee's The Idea of You. When I watched it, I was gripped by the intimate love scenes. Like there was something different about this one. It felt real. And I was like, oh, I wish I had a partner. So The Idea of You comes to mind. And then I'd still been in my audiobook bag. And I finished not too long ago, Shonda Rhimes' The Year of Yes. I didn't know how I was going to connect with that, but there was something that she shared which I felt like spoke to a lot of at least the women that are older millennials. And she was talking about how all these things that women are taught to want, have, get married, have a child, do all these things traditionally. And she was just like, I ain't want that. I didn't want that shit. And she just decided to kind of do her own thing. And I was like, oh, right. Like I didn't really know much about Shonda beyond like Shonda Land and the things that she created. But when like close to the end of the book, she was just like, no, I have my 3 children. I decided not to get married to my fiance at the time. And she's living her best life. And I was like, I can respect that because I'm still navigating what partnership and intimacy looks like for me in a non-traditional world.
Yes, yes. That's huge, particularly for when you have a career or calling that you really love. Sometimes it's hard to say, I prefer this over that. So to be able to embrace that and say that, especially as women, I think is huge. I am going to talk about Eric, the show that's on Netflix with Benedict Cumberbatch. I think it's like 6 or 8 episodes. One writer, one director, I believe they're both women. It is a quirky show, and I really appreciated that it took big swings tonally, character wise, thematically. It was doing a lot. It was trying to do a lot thematically, but I really appreciated that. I was like, I like these big swings. And then Benedict was just phenomenal. Like he was phenomenal in it. So I really appreciated the big swings, and I love shows that really play with tone and even play with genre. Like it starts out like a murder mystery, but then it's not, and then it's like a father-son. Like it's really, I was just inspired by the big swings.
I have to check that out. I've heard people talk about Eric, and I saw it on my screen, and I was like, I have to come back to this because I think this is a limited series, so I want to see what's going on over here.
It's so funny. They're always like in the business, we're not buying limited series, and then every other show is a limited series, and it's like, okay. But yeah. Well, thank you for tuning in to another installment of the Creative Cut Up podcast. We had fun, and we always have fun chatting with you and talking smack about the business. So if you enjoy it, again, please leave a review, a 5-star review at that, if you're so inclined. And please share with your friends. Sharing is caring, and spread this creative goodness. Thanks for listening to the Creative Cut Up podcast, a lively and honest space for storytellers that sits at the intersection of craft, business, and independence. Listen to us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you dig it, subscribe, rate, review, and please tell a friend. If you need help getting back into your creative practice, check out the Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal. You can also join our newsletter and our We Create Daily community, both of which provide even more resources and opportunities to thrive creatively at thecreatedaily.com. And lastly, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn at The Create Daily. Ever wonder how a novel went from the page to the screen? how an entire film derived from a great magazine article, or how you get the life rights to tell the story of that fascinating person you met or historical figure you're obsessed with. Learn the process in our new on-demand course called Based On, how to adapt books, articles, and real-life stories for film and TV. Led by myself, Felicia Pride, and Drea Rowland, Honeychild's creative executive and co-host of the Creative Cut Up podcast, you'll learn the process of optioning and developing IP for adaptation, the nuances of 3 different types of adaptations: books, articles, life rights, all the development jargon, what Honeychild looks for and how we source, search, and track IP, plus the answers to all of your burning questions. We'll break down the ins and outs of adapting IP and more. You'll get immediate access to our on-demand course for 6 months upon registration. So sign up today at thecreatedaily.com.